Welcome. My name is Angela Dean. I'm a volunteer working to coordinate this transition team effort with many others. And I just want to give you a quick update on just brief overview of
There.
how the meeting will go today. We have invited the candidates as well as opened it up to the public. But we do want to focus on giving the candidates a chance to ask questions, provide comment, and request additional information. So we would like, if you're not a candidate, please stay muted. You will have a chance to still ask questions, but we would like you to put those in the chat. And then at the end, if there's time to respond during the meeting, we will. If not, we'll follow up with you later. What we'll do is go through each of the team overviews. At the end of each section, we'll actually take a pause then to ask questions that are pertaining to that particular topic, so we don't lose track of all the many questions we'll have. But we do want to get through. We have a lot of information to get through, so we'll take that break just to focus again on those topics, and then at the end we'll have a wrap-up Q&A opportunity as well. So if we could just hold those until we have the big questions flash on the screen, that would be wonderful. So with that, let me get to the next slide. I'm going to let Kay start this off with discussing why we're doing this, why we're spending the time now to prepare our city. So take it away, Kay.
Okay, I will. Hi, everyone. Welcome and welcome to all the candidates. I want to thank each and every one for stepping up. It's a great thing, and I'm proud of the Valley. We have 37 candidates. It's awesome. So without further ado, let me jump into the substance here. This slide was shared at our...
If you, Angela Dean's leading most of it. Oh,
oops.
Yeah, could we have people mute, please?
Trying to mute everybody here.
Okay.
Okay, continue.
No. Okay, thank you. This is a slide actually from our March 28th meeting, I believe it was. And we'll go back to that. That was our first town hall for the Ogden Valley startup and the transition team. And the point back then was, why bother? Why are we doing all this transition work in advance? And what you see there is the timeline. We're way back in June with our candidate declaration. There's all that time to the election. But if you look at the election canvass, which is the date that the Weber County Commissioners confirmed the election results, is November 18th. And we have roughly 23 business days, given the holidays, until the time the electeds will take office. And that's precious little time to really do all the work it gets starting up a city requires. So why are we so busy in advance? That's because we want to get a lot of the work done early for the benefit of the Valley, but also really for the benefit of the officers-elect who have a lot to do then. Now, if we can go to the next slide. This is the statutory code that confers special powers on the elect during that period of time. And I've highlighted what it allows them to do. It allows them to do a lot of startup preparatory work to get the city going, essentially adopting budgets and ordinances, making personnel contracts or service contracts, hire people, negotiate equipment. Now, the next 2 or 3 are also critical. It allows them.
So Sundays at 11 p.m. Don't swim. Seems fun on there.
Can we have everyone mute, please? But anyway, the last 3 items allows them to also get gap funding because the city won't really start receiving funds for a number of months after January 5. And that's a very critical matter that we have to set up. We can either borrow from the county or there are a number of other devices. And finally, it lets the electeds make appointments to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has to get up and running in order to propose zoning ordinances and other matters such as the Ogden Valley General Plan for the new city to adopt. So we got a lot of work to get done before that canvas on November 18th. So hope you'll jump in and get up to speed and help with the work. Basically, what we're doing tonight is taking you through the work that has been done based on work that went back to a small team of people that started working actually before the election. Nick Dahlkamp, who was one of the sponsors and the project manager who kept everyone on task, kept asking, who knows how to set up a city or stand up a city is what the phrase he used. And he realized it was an awesome task. And he then put together a small team of subject matter experts, people like Angela, who's an architect and who has worked a lot with planning commissions and the like, and a number of other people to really look at what are the tasks, what are the steps that we need to do to get a city up and running. And as project managers do, Nick developed a task list. This was vetted with the Utah League of Cities and Towns, an organization with which you should become familiar. They have lots of good training materials for people interested in municipal offices. We reviewed that with them. We reviewed this with a number of attorneys involved in incorporation activities and with some other cities who had gone through this recently, and we were updating that as we went. So the work you're seeing tonight is based on that task list, which was divided up into 3 primary teams. And then each of the team leads took their packet of work, their package of work, and wrote up another project management tool called a work packet. So you see there 2 areas I'm working with, finance and administration. And we all followed the same form, describing the scope of work, and then more importantly, the deliverables. What do we really have to produce? So you see the sequence and the flow down of those tasks into the work tonight.
Hey, how do we get,
Oh,
how can we view those?
pardon me?
I've muted her. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
Should we go on?
Okay, if I can understand, hold questions, candidates, until there's a form with question marks. And again, we need someone to mute.
Are you muted?
Okay. And Christine, I saw your question, so we'll get to it. Okay, next slide. Write a note, Christine. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the work. And you're seeing, and let me move my little panel of you all up to the top there. You're seeing the scope of work. That's the first major paragraph on these work packets. And I summarized this area into these 7 items that need to be done. They're all relating to finance, and almost all of them are underway. So I want to highlight a couple of really important ones in the next few slides and take you through a little bit of the detail of what has been done. Next slide. Now, this project is perhaps the one I was most intimidated by because understanding the financials of municipal accounting and how the budgets are prepared is an awesome task, especially for a liberal arts major. But luckily, we have volunteers who are very adept at this, including a few CPAs. I want to mention, all in all, we had over 180 volunteers sign up to help us. In each category of work, though, what really emerged based on time, availability, and skill set were really maybe groups of 4 to 10 people who really are hanging in there and doing the work for the valley and for our eventual candidates and elected officials. So in any event, we had a couple of financially oriented folks dig into this one, and we have some other CPAs on our team who are doing peer review of this project. Now, the budget, it's very simply stated in words. We have to project revenue and expenses and prepare the budget in a very circumscribed, specific form required by the state. We're midway through that and in the process of checking our calculations. Here are some basics. If you follow the county budget process, they're on an annual basis. Their fiscal year is January to December. And all of their numbers, all of the feasibility studies were actually done on an annualized basis. Well, municipalities get to have a fiscal year that's different from July to June. And just a bit of language clarification here. Right now, we would be working on to prepare the balance of the 26 budget. The current municipal budget, if we had been a municipality, would have gone from July of 25 through June of 26. So what we're facing as a new city in January is actually a 6-month budget to get us started. And then we'll have a full year budget, which would be called the 2027 budget after that. We also will have to pass ordinances needed for fee collection and to operationalize all the taxes and other financial transactions we will need. And that's going to be a mighty process as well. We've got to get those ordinances prepared. What have the volunteers done who are the number gurus here? They've started in a good place. We met with the Huntsville treasurer for insights and also just a lot of nuts and bolts about how she puts the budget together. Something as simple as the so-called chart of accounts, how she has her spreadsheet set up so that they flow into the required format by the state. So we met with her, got her chart of accounts, saw some of the software that she utilizes, and also talked about things like receipt of taxes, reports she gets, reports she has to do. So that was a very useful start. The budgets are going to be quite different, but the process quite similar. Then our volunteers reviewed all the revenue areas from the LRB feasibility study. If you want a good basic introduction to municipal finance, reading that study, now it's not really pleasure reading, but it is very instructive to see how they put together the building blocks for funding the city. They were looking at different periods of time with data available to them. So they had projections, I believe, based on 22, 23 data and before. So what we're looking at is the same revenue areas, but updating it. The next bullet shows that we're looking at historical information from the county, as well as current financial data from both the county and the state. We also looked at a bunch of other research and analysis to get up-to-date, accurate data. These budgeting gurus kind of have figured out some clever ways to divine like how many permits were granted in this city boundary versus all of Weber County. So they've done a lot of forensic, so to speak, analysis to get accurate data for our city boundaries. Just last Friday, the primary folks who worked on the budget met for a peer review of some of the systems, some of the methods they had used to look at the revenue side. And next steps, we're continuing to refine the revenue projections. We're going to circle back and meet with LRB, the company that did the feasibility study, and look at our projected budget and how it meshes with their projections. We just talked today with the Utah State Tax Commission about having a meeting with them, not only to check some of our budget numbers, but also to look at sales data. We were not given, nor was LRB given, really very full sales tax data. It was held back. I believe the county had that, but there are legal restrictions because release of that information by vendor is rather proprietary and sensitive from a business point of view. So what we're looking at is when can we start getting accurate monthly sales tax data, and how soon might we be able to get specific data that really applies to our city businesses. So the tax commission is nothing but helpful, which is a nice thing. And finally, we're going to continue monitoring the county's budgetary reports as they go. The best guide for what we can expect when we start operations. More work to be done here, but a lot of impressive work already done by our volunteers with much more ahead. Okay, next slide. Okay, someone said when we started looking at what it takes to set up a city, someone said, we better get insurance the first hour of operations, because sadly, there are some lawsuits going back and forth. And lo and behold, we had one particular noble volunteer, and I'm not going to name names for fear of excluding and leaving out some people, but this volunteer was also just an incredible contributor. She immediately looked at all the insurance requirements of a new city. There are some statutory requirements, and there are also some smart to do requirements for insurance. The required insurance is property liability. If you have employees, you've got to get workers' comp. You then need to look at health insurance and other related employee benefits. If you do have employees, if you have cars and trucks, you need to look at car and truck insurance. And there's other insurance, even renter resolution from the city of Huntsville that we're going to be able to utilize their space. And it would be prudent for us to get renter's insurance. So those are the types of insurance that we're looking at. The two main types of insurers, there is a pooled insurance fund called the Utah Local Government Trust, which I believe Huntsville participates in. And then there are private insurers, like Olympus is an organization that specializes in municipal insurance and government insurance. That seems to be highly thought of. Then the municipal officials will have varying opinions about what's good insurance for a startup city like ours. It sounds like new startups with no history might favor the Utah Local Government Trust because it's a simpler system and it's affordable. So for sure, that is going to be one of the primary insurance options that we'll look for and prepare for the new officials to consider. One caution here is our volunteer was advised that beware of obtaining private firm quotes that can backfire. A first application could block others from covering the same city or bidding on the business. So we'll be cautious about how we get quotes. And actually, we need a lot more information before we can actually get quotes. When we've talked about what is necessary to get some kind of bid or quote, we need things like how many employees, what property do we own, how many cars and trucks. And frankly, it's a lot of information we don't have yet. And what we're going to talk about later, the form of the organization will very highly influence some of those answers. Volunteer work progress. Our volunteer research the Utah Code. By the way, a number of our volunteers are using AI very effectively. They've interviewed other municipal officers and brokers, and they've summarized their findings. The summary is at the left, and they've also done a more detailed report, and you can see those are linked over on the lower left.
Did you want me to click on any of those?
Yeah, just a quick view just to see, some really great work done by the team, by this volunteer.
Well, we'll have to hold that for later because I made this a PDF. Sorry about that.
Uh-oh. Okay, good for
Come back.
PDFs. It's easy. And that's okay. Some of the summary was in the basics of the bullets that I mentioned, but really outstanding work. The next step that this volunteer is doing, and she actually texted me today, she wants to get that background information and start discussing options and the status of insurance with the broker. We've got to look at a timeline for realistically when can we put together the proposal, get the information required for the proposal, and then obtain quotes. So in summary, it's kind of like getting insurance for your household. It's just a whole different market for municipal insurance and probably a bit more bucks at stake here, but there's a good market to address that. Okie dokie, the next thing to know, the next thing we're highlighting here is, for lack of a better term, we call it institutional relationships. Scope of the work, cities have to have banks. You could go with one. We've been advised by a few cities, get 2 or 3. Look at your local banks, as well as Bank of Utah was recommended at some bank that really has a specialized municipal practice. We'll need to have auditors. We'll need to have a CPA. So there are many ways that the numbers appropriately will get reviewed and certified. And finally, we need a municipal financial advisor. There was concern, actually, in one of the other revenue areas where we would have needed a study, and the technical term escapes me. It's not the entitlements, it's the additional funds that in approving a development, the city or county might require of a developer or of a builder. And actually we were going to have to do one of these to do that process. We would have had to retain a municipal finance advisor to do that, while Weber County had a study done along these lines as of December 24th. So we looked out, we were concerned up front we might have to spend money on one of these financial advisors. We'll still line some experts up in municipal finance just to make sure we have the experts online and available. There are other things, for example, there are bond commitments we may need for the council, mayor, recorder, and treasurer. And this is one we've already done, is to obtain the application for the Public Treasurer's Investment Fund, which is a fund where some cities and municipalities can invest or hold their money. So let's go into basics. There are required relationships, which the person leading this work team researched and compiled. And to do that, she identified the needs through her research and actually discussions with other municipalities. This volunteer actually brought a real business-minded and civic-minded approach to this area of work. She published an article in the Ogden Valley News describing the need to get organizations in these various areas to support the new city. And in this article, she asked for referrals if anyone knew of banks, auditors, CPAs, etc., that they would like to refer. They were to contact the transition team. And then she also prepared an evaluation rubric. That is kind of a scorecard for how to assess the proposals for each of these institutions that want to do business with the city. She also is asking for people who want to help evaluate these institutions who want our business. So I don't think we got many responses to those requests. We'll repeat them, but I thought she had adopted a really novel and professional way of selecting these business partners. So the next steps that we're going to look at are finalizing a list of possible providers and asking for more nominations from folks, asking them for proposals of what they would furnish for the new city, and then review and score those proposals using the rubric. Now, this presents a good example of how far the transition team work and how far the volunteers work can go. You know, let's refer back to that short window when these officers-elect are empowered to sign contracts, get relationships, retain entities, do all the stuff before they're sworn in. However, if we waited until those few weeks to get all this work done, they would be behind the 8 ball. It would be virtually impossible to do just this little piece of work and then all the other stuff they need to be focusing on. And so the plan here is to get everything ready for them, to identify these providers, to have their proposals scored, and essentially to present for decision by the elected officials with the naming of who they really want to do business with on behalf of the city. So I thought this package of work is going really well, and hats off again to our volunteers who really thought this through and are executing it beautifully. Okay, next slide. Now, we have a lot of other work to do on that task list, and just to highlight a few things, one is very basic. How do we complete incorporation? Some of this is legal. A lot of this is under the Utah Code. And I have researched this, and it's a little bit like an orchestrated waltz. You have to kind of go back and forth between various code provisions. And you know, the mayor is going to have to go back and forth to various offices to get this done. What we will need is to take the final local entity plat. Now, that's essentially the map. But in the statute, there are all these rules and requirements for how it has to be prepared and stamped by our engineer, and a little place for the name of the city, and all these technical details where we have to, check the box off. So we have to have that final local entity plat prepared. That really, even before we submit anything to the lieutenant governor, that has to be provided to the county, to have the county surveyor and I think the recorder bless that document and say it passes with their approval. Then, within 30 days of the election, the mayor gets to run down with that plat and with a document called a request for boundary change to the Lieutenant Governor's office, and present that to her office people, much as we did with petitions. So hopefully we'll get nice pictures that will go in the new City Hall of Fame at that point. Then, within only 10 days of receiving those documents, the Lieutenant Governor is supposed to issue a certificate of incorporation. Or they might tell us you have to go back and fix some stuff. But if we do things right, we'll get the certificate of incorporation. That may, in fact, be the official birthday of the city, with the swearing in of the officers done in January 5. But this date, I think, may have some significance for other things. So we might get the certificate of incorporation in November if we work hard and fast. Other work that we're doing is, again, it's kind of looking at the choreography we have to do with various offices at the state in order to trigger the receipt of revenue. Some cities, when they're starting up, have missed a submission date and missed out on a quarter of revenue or so if they didn't hit all the marks they were supposed to hit with these various county and state offices. So more research on that to come. And putting that all together, we're going to produce a step-by-step sequence of events for all these notices, official actions, and other triggers we've got to do. And finally, on to another topic. Cities are required to produce emergency plans. We already have had a pretty active CERT committee in the Valley. It kind of was going very strong and then ran into some issues with the county, who was also doing their plan. So they stepped down a bit, but people still have their, I think it's not their walkie-talkies, but their short-wave radio receivers. Maybe it is walkie-talkies, but they're still using those, and actually they're just blowing off the dust of a lot of work that had been done 10 years ago, 4 years ago, before it was kind of pushed to the side by some other emergency work by the county. So I'm feeling really good about the volunteers working on that. They're eager to get running again. Okay, next slide. Now, one of my other teams is administration. And quite candidly, I tend to think of this as more, it's organization and HR stuff. So it's structure of how this organization is going to work. And then to the extent we hire employees or have contract staff, how are we going to hire them? What are we going to do in terms of salary and benefits? And also needing to look at various state required benefits if we do in fact have employees. So we have some other stuff, such as we need to kind of line out and prepare what the council itself needs to operate, what are the procedures and necessary materials. And also, near and dear to my heart as a lawyer, we get to establish judicial procedures. We have responsibilities to set up a justice court, which is lower level infractions and code infractions, some traffic infractions. And the standard way of doing that is to find some other existing traffic court. Maybe it's Roy, Layton, maybe contract with them to be the justice court for us, but we still have to look at who's going to prosecute that. Do we have to have a legal aid relationship for indigent defendants and the like? So we are pursuing that, and we actually have a volunteer who's a retired judge who is helping us with that. So kudos to him. The biggest thing that our team on this front has been working on is org design. And basically that dictates so much of what we do in terms of employees, benefits, how we operate in general. So I always like to start with, what does the organization look like? We have the tasks they need to do, thanks to Nick Dahlkamp and his team. And now we need to see how are they going to do it? What's the organization? And we came up with three primary options, and there are variations on these options, but they're really three basic ideas to think about. The first is a traditional model where you think of a traditional staff organization, primarily employees. You may have a few contractors here and there. The second one is a hybrid that really starts deploying more contractors in lieu of employees. And then you go total outsource with council members supervising the outsourced services. So it sounds radical, but I'll talk more about that later. What did the volunteers do to develop these options? We researched code on the famous 6 council-week mayor form of government organizations. That's the form of government we chose, which really means we have 6 council members, one of whom is the mayor. And I hate that term, week mayor. They just have different duties. But oh, hey, Joe, you better mute your mic there, Joe. So we did the research. We brainstormed. This was a fun team to be on in terms of having experienced business consultants, managers, people who had worked in organizations and done organizational design, really kick around. What are the ideas here? How does the organization work? What will it need? And we're really a startup. Where do you want to be as a startup? As I noted, we have 3 models, and already we've had discussions with 2 outsource options. One, the Salt Lake Municipal Services Group, which is a group that actually does municipal services. They've outsourced municipal services in a number of cities and towns in Salt Lake County. They're looking at doing outsourced work for planning for Moab, and they came around to us. One of their employees was actually at one of our planning meetings. He lives up here. So we had a really interesting discussion with them and understanding their services. And then we talked with county staff. We did not talk with the commissioners, but rather we talked with county staff on the macro idea of how this work might go, how they might be an outsourced provider with clear obligations to the new city. And finally, on another project, and I really appreciated the development of this, these sharp people with experience said, well, what do we want the city to look like? What do we want it to be in, say, 5 to 6 years? And a lot of that was with a technology point of view, as well as a cultural point of view. You know, we want to be a community, we want to be connected, we're already a warm, neighborly, and inclusive community. And this group produced a vision statement of the connected community and really outlines what I appreciate as a complement to the Ogden Valley General Plan, and also challenges the elected officers to really look carefully at technology as they build the city in the years ahead with a view to maximizing the connection among the citizens and information available from the city, and really look for state-of-the-art solutions rather than just grabbing any old software package and adopting it. So hopefully technology will help support us as we try to connect as a community. Next steps. Well, some of this is we're not going to do any work. I'm joking, but we realize we need to freeze these models that we have and really kind of put on hold staffing planning until we get feedback from candidates. it would be foolish to start designing extensive comp plans and recruitment and hiring procedures until we get a better idea of how many, if any, employees do we really want to have. We have a wonderful volunteer who just landed in our lap who does compensation studies. We're going to have her do a salary review for not only potential staff if we were to hire, but also for the officials. The pay for council members and mayors is all over the block for our type of government. And we just want to see what the range is and have some ideas for presenting to the council. And finally, in the meantime, we want to really focus on getting critical functions set. We absolutely need a recorder. We need these financial regulations set up and look at necessary legal support. So that is where we are on that org design in our admin group. Next slide, please. Here are the models. And these models were produced by volunteers and show some of our thought. On the left is the more traditional model of an org chart. The arrow along the bottom, yeah.
Kate, what I'll do, since I don't have hot links to this, when I publish this to share with the group, I'll include these models
Okay,
in the form so everybody can see. But I think
Okay.
for now, we'll just have to talk through it. But
sure, I can talk through it because they're
That'll
pretty
help you.
easy. Model 1 looks like a traditional org chart with the typical hierarchies and departments. Most are employees. There's a healthy few areas of contractors or outsourced work. The second is a hybrid where you start seeing fewer employees and more outsourced services. The third model is really the one that our small team of advisors is recommend we look at most closely. And that is looking at outsourcing most, if not all, of the city's functions for our first period of operations. Why is that? We think it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to do a really good recruitment and hiring process in those few weeks between the time that the election of results are finalized and between in the time that the officers take the oath of office. What might change that is if the candidates tell us, oh no, we want employees in advance. And so you can start designing recruitment and hiring processes right now in August. And let's get out and recruit some fine people. Maybe we want a city manager or some such thing. That will give us enough time to do some proactive recruitment and hiring and talk amongst the candidates who are likely to be elected, who have made it through the primaries. That, however, would require a unique degree of consensus among all those candidates. This outsourcing approach really it really avoids those disputes and that need to decide who you're going to hire and how are you going to recruit them by looking at more an outsourced model that will ensure continuity of operations from the time that the new city is officially incorporated through the early operation after the officials are sworn into office. And at that time, with their full powers, the folks who are in office can really decide how to prioritize what functions they might want to take in-house. They might decide they are really getting a benefit from outsourcing most, if not all things. And what we also intend in this model is that the individual council members will essentially take a portfolio of work. For example, one person could do public works, another person could oversee legal, finance, another person might get another area of work, planning, and code enforcement, for example. But then those elected officials serving as council would have operational duties that would amount to being contract managers for the outsourced service. And we think that would be an optimal way to start out. It would require the council members to understand what the work is. And also, they would be able to hold accountable those entities to whom the work is contracted. And then, as I said, they could design a sequence of inboarding or bringing in-house those things, if any, that they want to do through employees, through part-timers, or through some other means. So you may have questions about this. Maybe during the question period, we can pull up the models, and we'll certainly make those available. Again, I want to emphasize they are just models. You could use lots of other square boxes in names and distributions of functions, but this is the conceptual description of what these are. Okay. And we have other tasks. Yes, we have to line up facilities and equipment. That is fairly straightforward. And again, if we go with the early outsource model, we will not have much supplies and equipment to worry about, though there will be a few items we will need. We have to have some volunteers look at preparing council operations and procedures. So those are ready to go when the council starts operating. We have to set up that court procedure I had mentioned. We then are going to prepare. First, we're going to examine intergovernmental agreements. And those are agreements between, excuse me, I just lost my Zoom. There are agreements between, let's say, the county and a city or two cities on how services are provided. We want to obtain those. The county has already promised that they will turn those over for us as models. And we also are seeking other contracts the county has that pertain to service to the valley. Already we've been approached by waste management about what's going to happen with their contract. They're one of three waste providers to the valley. So, you know, that was a clear reminder to the county. They went first to the county. Clear reminder to the county that it would be wise if we start talking about these things. We have law enforcement contracts we're going to look at. And finally, very important, anyone who feels strongly about this one, please contact me, because we're going to work on an ethics and conflict of interest code for our new city using best-in-class practices so that you know, we hold ourselves and our officials to, you know, a high degree of integrity in the execution of their duties. So this is one I'm personally passionate about. Please contact me if you have an interest in working on that as well. Okay. Oh, my elections. That's why you're all here. We had a team, largely Ann Ladd and myself, who really wanted to promote all the information about the candidate sign up and candidate maximization, we should call it. We were not really seeking to recruit individuals. We wanted to just maximize you all to sign up to run. Lo and behold, that worked. We have unheard of numbers of candidates. It's wonderful. To get there, we had 2 candidate info sessions. All 5 districts were invited. We're also continuing to forward updates and reminders from Weber County elections. We do have upcoming training sessions, and thanks to our transition team, the same session that they were offering down in Ogden at the Weber Center they are going to offer that up here in the valley, so we can go there, and I think they'll have a few more valley-specific materials for us, and candidate forums. Our transition team recognized we couldn't approach some of the partisan groups that sometimes host debates during primaries because this is a nonpartisan election. And the League of Women Voters is the foremost group that actually organizes and hosts discussions and forums of this type. They have agreed, and they are in the process of scheduling a meeting of this type. I think it's perhaps in July, but they're looking at dates at this point. So we'll all have
Yeah,
an
I can interject there. There is an
Okay.
update that it will be on July 8th for the mayoral candidates at 6 p.m. We don't have a location yet, but TBD, if you put that in your calendar. And then there'll be another separate Q&A with the candidates of the other districts. So July 8th for that first League of Women Voters.
Okay.
Um,
I think that's it.
Okay, so here's
There
the
it is,
fun part. For those, a few people joined late, and so just to recap how we're going to go about these questions and answer period between teams, we are just opening it up for the candidates at this time. And so if you're a citizen at large, please stay and listen, but we want to allow the candidates a chance to chime in here. And so you can unmute yourself, but if you could do a raise of hands so I can try to do this in somewhat orderly fashion, that would be most appreciated. So if there are any questions pertaining specifically to Team 1 and what Kay has just presented, go ahead and jump up. We'll pan around here to see if and I thought you were all going to talk at once. What's going on?
Hey, Angela, this is Christy Beglia. I apologize. I can't figure out how to raise my hand, but I
Oh,
do
you
have
can.
one
Okay, well,
question.
welcome. You're hop on in
Thank
then.
you. When Kay was talking, she had mentioned lawsuits. Knowing that the county has chosen to, or the city has chosen to incorporate, are there current lawsuits against the city? Or are the lawsuits against like the water districts and other facets of the community right now?
Okay, Christy, we have no lawsuits against the city, I'm happy to report. You know, the city really isn't formed yet to sue, to be a target for a suit. And so, you know, we don't have to worry about that now. But as we look around at the litigation that's going on, and just the general environment of you know, anyone can sue anyone else for anything these days, although it will get dismissed at some point. It's just wise to prepare and to have the insurance that's necessary if one is to be sued, if the city is to be sued. And yes, there are cities against the water districts. One thing that is that really is helpful at this point is, you know, the water districts and companies are independent of the city. And so while some people may think, oh, we're going to have to worry about city sewer and the like, that's not really a responsibility of the city. So we would not be involved with that.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was tracking some of the lawsuits that are out there right now. I just understanding that the city is still in its infancy. I just wanted to understand if there's anything, out there. Obviously, there could be something in the future based on everything that's going on right now, but there's nothing naming Ogden Valley City right now.
Sure.
Okay, I see Peggy unmuted. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes, I do. I have a couple, but I'll start with this one. When you look at the organizational charts, the three of them, is there a way to do insurance pros and cons with each one of those and costs associated with those? Because if you're going for full-time employees on one end of the spectrum and the other end is complete contract work, is there implications for insurance, salaries, benefits, things
Oh,
like
sure.
that should be
Sure.
considered under each of those? And could we have that to look at, or is that something that's down the road?
No, we could put together some estimates of that. I do know that when I was in private industry, one reason companies did outsource was to lighten the burden of employee costs and benefits, and also, frankly, the burden of having to have brick and mortar facilities. But it could be a pure estimate, but you could look at different costs. It may not, it may not necessarily dictate or be certain enough to dictate a decision, but you could do some rough estimates.
That's all, yes, that's all I would be asking. What would be a benefit? Would there be one financial going either way?
Sure.
Okay.
Good. And then you mentioned the second one was your fiscal year starting. And did I hear this correctly? You will not get funds for months. You can
Yeah.
borrow them, but
Yeah. It's really they call it gap funding. And this is where some of our research with other cities have been of interest. Marriott Slaterville, for example, and they were working under a different code at that time, but they got a loan from Weber County. That's permitted under the current statute. But Erda, a city whose incorporation was highly disputed, wasn't prepared. And frankly, some of the council members dug into their own pocket and loaned the city some money. So beware, again, the message is be prepared. So you
Right.
council members won't have to give the city a loan. And that was unusual. But yeah, there are provisions. If you go back to that page where I quote the statute, or the code provision rather, there are about 3 or 4 ways it talks about how you can get money.
okay,
Yeah.
good. And one last kind of random question, and I don't know if I should save this for later, but will you give me the total acreage of the new city?
I don't have the acreage.
Oh, and if anyone does,
I have it in a report. I have square miles.
yes, square miles, that'd be great. If we can kind of find that out. I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Peggy.
Questions? Any other questions on the material so far? No? Okay.
I did have a quick question.
Okay, go for it.
You mentioned that the League of Women Voters is going to do forms for the mayor candidates. What about for the city council candidates? Is there a
They
date yet?
will also, they just don't have a date set.
They don't have a date. Okay.
It'll be shortly after. Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Hey, Fred Blickley here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the thought at the end, the transition to the city council members and the mayor, all this work that the volunteers have been doing, which is really, really impressive, very well organized and very thorough. It would seem that you'd have some transition there with the volunteers and the city council members and mayor, and meet and go through it. And
You bet.
and that's what you probably have in mind, but just wanted to hear what your thoughts were on that.
So
Go ahead, Angela.
chime in a little bit. So part of that, I think Kay touched on, is we're hoping that the candidates will all, if I think many of you are involved to date, and if you're not, we're hoping that to bring you into this effort so that this is a good primer then, so that you're ready to hit the ground running. And then additionally, we'll bundle up this package probably in a digital form. Otherwise, we'd have many, many binders full. And we'll present this over a number of evenings with more of a specific breakdown into these topics. really focused, directly with the candidates that come out of the primary in August is the goal. And again, to then bring them really on board so they can start to guide the rest of the transition work from then until, the January timeframe, because there will still be more work to do. But I think as we get closer, there will be a big reveal, but that reveal will hopefully include the 2 candidates out of each district in the mayor race as well.
So that'll probably be, busy times after the election in November through November, December, huh?
And August, I would say after the primary, things should heat up as well then, because it'll be, a short list of those that will be running the city, and hopefully they're still willing to participate. Candidates that are through the primary will dive deeper into this and join the team.
And Fred, I don't think, for most of our volunteers, especially those who've done deep dives, I think we'll be available to do additional research or to look into questions you all might have. We're interested in successful startup, not just doing the book and then giving it to you.
So, and the primary will narrow it down to 2 candidates per district, is that right?
Correct, in the mayoral race.
And two mayor candidates, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So great question.
Yeah, and Kay, I saw my notes I wrote down from one of your earlier meetings, 63 square miles.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I can tell you're an engineer.
right, you got that. We like numbers.
I like it.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this? We'll jump to the next topic.
There
Um,
are
Really
a few
quick,
questions.
Yes.
sorry, one more, this is Christy Veckley again. Just one more question for you. I understand that some of the stuff's going to remain with Weber County and probably like the schools, library, the standard business as usual. When it comes to the Valley incorporating and assets, is the Valley going to have assets that it's going to take over for Weber County?
You mean like property or buildings?
Property, buildings, snow removal, anything like that. Are we gonna take any type of equipment and items like that over as part of the city?
It's not out of the question, but there are not plans to do so. I think we have a roads and snow committee, which is next up. And I think they're looking more at models of hiring services or outsourcing rather than acquiring equipment. But I may be wrong. That leads to the next set of presentations.
So here we are in team 2, and this is, so Madison Avalez is leading the charge on this with her group of volunteers. She's out of town right now, so we're just offering a quick snapshot of the work that is being done. They've broken into these 3 topical groups with focus on IT and digital work, setting up websites, any special software needed, and such things. Roads and snows, everybody's concerned about. So they will provide not recommendations, but basically options and a summary report on what the possible contractual arrangements may be, by whom. And they will also, as well with garbage recycling. There's been some great feedback from volunteers and local residents on options there. And they'll be gathering this input, from within and their own expertise. They will be surveying other cities and putting out requests for, not proposals to sign, as we've discussed, but who's out there that you all could be signing with when the time comes. So they've been meeting each month and divvying up assignments and checking off the list. So that's all I have to say on that. And I want to jump ahead because we have, I don't know if there are any questions on that. I can't answer them, but maybe somebody else could, or you could send them to us and we could have Madison follow up on any questions regarding that. And then we can jump to team 3, planning and land use with Janet.
Hello, everybody. For everybody that doesn't know me, I'm Janet Wampler, and I'm the team lead for Team 3 Planning and Land Use. So the scope of work that we have in Team 3 is to provide planning and land use recommendations for the newly elected council to consider adopting. So the new city council will have a broad latitude on what they want to do land use wise. And so Team 3 is looking to put together a concise group of recommendations that the city council will have so that you're not starting with a white sheet, that you have something to spark ideas and go off of. So in that scope of work, we're looking at the general plan, zoning ordinances and a zoning map, land use codes, and municipal codes. Skip to the next. All right. So Team 3, Planning and Land Use, was by far the most popular group for people to sign up for, I think mostly because it affects everybody directly. And it was an often discussed theme of the vote for incorporation. So overall, we have a little over 70 volunteers that had signed up. Within that, I would say we have about 25 to 30 people who come regularly and submit their homework assignments on time. We have been working and meeting every week for the past 3 months. We meet at different locations, mostly between the Huntsville Library or the Ogden Valley Library and another location on the other side in the Eden side of the valley. Okay, so the city council is going to have, like I said, a lot of breadth of what they can do within planning and land use. The goal that my team has is that we want to ensure a seamless transition for the citizens of the valley. So we think it's obviously very important for citizens to know from January 4th to January 5th, when the city comes online, they probably want to know, what rights did I have yesterday? Do I have those same rights today? Has anything changed? Where do I live? What is my zone? And so with that in mind, we have opted to stick closely to what currently exists and then offer recommended changes, adjustments, and improvements in our mind for you all to consider. So with that, what we've looked to do is crowdsource recommendations and options. Whether or not somebody is a signed up volunteer for Team 3, everybody has been encouraged to submit their recommendations. I set up a system where people didn't have to show up to in-person meetings. Everything is in a shared drive in Google. And so I invite everybody to opt in, participate. You can go through zones, even if we've already, kind of closed the books for Team 3's volunteer groups on it because we need to move forward. But you can still go back through and look and add in your comments, or as candidates, simply look at it, familiarize yourself to help you figure out which way you might want to go. Again, like I said, the city council can actually start fresh and write brand new things if they wish to. But our recommendation is to have some continuity. One thing we can't do, however, is sweep over things as they're written. So anyone who might have thought it doesn't need to be this complicated, we can just take everything that's currently with the county and what was unincorporated Ogden Valley and we can just bring it over. That's not really an option. Number one, because all of unincorporated Weber County ordinances are commingled. So under the same codes that the zones we have in the valley, under those same codes, Western Weber, which has a very different landscape, their codes are also commingled in there. So if for no other reason, we need to go through and pare those down. So next slide, please. All right, so like I said, we've been working for 3 months, meeting weekly. Everybody gets homework assignments and everybody is free to go on to the shared drive and play around. But as of today, January 17th, we have completed an assessment of the general plan. We spent 3 weeks of public meetings on it. There's a lot of discussion and a lot of detail, but the overall summary of what we are putting forth for you all to consider is a very close assessment of what it currently is, but we would be removing any portions or language about the Upper Valley that is outside of the city boundary. So because our general plan is of all of Ogden Valley, or sometimes known as the Upper Valley, it includes the Canyon, Avon, Causey, Snow Basin, Powder Mountain, things that are outside our city boundary, and we will not have municipal management of. So they all need to come out. In addition, our current general plan was last written in 2016. And so a number of the paragraphs in there discuss at the close of certain studies, we need to input the results of said studies and integrate them into the general plan. So it's been almost 10 years. We have those studies completed. We have results that have been suggested by the companies that were paid. And so we actually have an attorney volunteer that has volunteered to help script the language of the results of those studies. There are 3 different studies: the hydrology study, the 2023 Bowen Collins, I think it's wastewater infrastructure study, and there's a Northern Valley or a North Fork sewer study as well. So we have subject matter experts and an attorney that are working to script the language of those results so that we can get that input into our hopefully adopted general plan. Also, now that we're going to be a municipality, we are going to need language about moderate income housing. So we will need to put the language that's required by the state into it. And then lastly, there are various recommendations from the volunteers, people who were passionate about certain things and maybe they wanted to tighten up or put some teeth into whether it's a dark sky ordinance or short-term rentals or various topics throughout the general plan. There are comments that are sprinkled throughout the current language where people are offering recommendations. When it comes to zoning ordinances, we spent 8 weeks working on a list of zoning ordinances. Because there's such an amount of work in the planning and land use department, again, this is all municipal codes, all land use codes, including maps and everything. It's an incredible amount of work. So we decided to concentrate on the zones where, as it stands within the city boundary, most of us live. So we have concentrated, we've gone through and made recommendations on the AB3 zone, as you can see. So the forest zones, the shoreline, all the ones you see there, those are completed to date. All members of Team 3 have had access and have submitted recommendations for adjustments. Some of them might be, this is a great ordinance, we can adopt it wholesale as is, and some of them have suggested amendments. And then the last thing here, number 3, is zoning map. We were blessed to have this incredible volunteer who happens to work in GIS, who created a proposed zoning map for our municipality. And I'll talk more about that on another slide, but it was a blessing to have him join us. So we can go to the next slide. All right, so a lot of people want to talk to me about what will this look like? What will our completed work look like? And so just an example of the general plan. The general plan right now is presented in a PDF format. We do have volunteers with the software to actually fully edit and make a completed proposal. But that's something I think we should do after we get past the primary and we're down to 2 options of each seat so that we have a better focus of who's actually going to be a candidate. In the meantime, what we have done on the PDF is highlight and add commentary as it stands on what should be cut, what should be added, and so on and so forth. So the general plan, you see some screenshots of it. You'll see red lines and highlights and commentary from various volunteers.
Next slide.
Go to the next slide. The zoning ordinances, very similarly, although what I did was I just copied and pasted the zoning ordinances from the county website, put them into a Google Doc so that everybody would be able to go in and fully edit. So again, you'll see red line versions. I didn't want to actually have any of the volunteers, including the transition team entity itself, make cuts, because I think it's important that the city council gets to see what the actual current ordinance is and what we're making suggestions of, but you can decide whether you want to accept them or not. So you won't see a finished product of, you know, any language cut out or added in. What you'll see are red lines and comments of what people think should be done. And then again, with the zoning map, we have, with the zoning map, Jeff Baker, who spent over 10 hours hand drawing in the computer system our city boundaries, overlaying the current zones from the county. And he's recently put in our district map for me. So he's done a wonder of work, but there will be more to do later, but it's been incredibly helpful to be able to see which zones actually reside and are working currently inside our municipal boundary that we're looking to have in the next few months. All right. Okay, so that was the work that has been completed. So now we're going into the work that still needs to be completed. And in this, I'm here to request feedback from all the candidates. My strategy for tackling this enormous portfolio of work was to concentrate on what I believed was the highest priority, and leave for later things that I thought were less priority, because if we run out of time, they're not day one necessities. However, now that we have candidates, we can receive feedback from you on whether you think, no, those are actually priorities to you, and then we can just simply readjust. So currently there are, 5 zones I've left out of the team's review and recommend. And they are as follows: the master development overlay zone, the form-based zone, the manufacturing zone, the gravel zone, and the mobile manufacturing home park zone. These are zones that currently exist within our municipal boundary. The reason that I'm saying they're not necessarily high priority for day one, they still exist. The property owners that own property that are zoned in those areas, that stays until a city council decides to make any changes. However, no one can ask to rezone into a different zone that hasn't yet been adopted. So in other words, everybody who has any of these zones would still have that zone and be subject to whatever that current ordinance either gives them or doesn't allow them to do. But if they wanted to, if somebody else wanted to rezone to gravel that doesn't currently have it, if we don't adopt it right away, it simply puts that on hold. It's not an option to rezone or apply to rezone into, and you can choose down the road if you wish to then adopt it. But I just don't think it's a priority for day one. If you feel otherwise, definitely please send me a message and let me know. The other thing is the zoning map will most likely, Jeff is incredibly generous and he has continued to make additional layers as I've requested them. But for the most part, it's going to have to stop where it is because the city needs to purchase the software. Right now, Jeff's doing it off of his. The city will need to purchase the software, and the city council will actually need to decide which zones they wish to adopt, and even whether or not they're the current ones or completely different ones. So at this point, what we've done, what Jeff has enabled us to have is a map that we can look at that shows us exactly where we live today and what's within the boundary. But moving forward and actually doing a full finished product is going to have to take decisions made by the council. Next. All right, so now you're seeing why I feel the need to prioritize. So we have done the majority of the zoning ordinances and the general plan. And that was 3 months of work. As Angela just mentioned, we hope to have initial finished products available come August, so that the primary candidates, or not, excuse me, not the primary, the actual general election candidates can weigh more heavily on the direction and the language of what's being put together. With that said, as you can see, these are the rest of the land use codes that currently exist for our unincorporated Ogden Valley. And so they're going to take time to get through. At the moment, this Thursday, my group meets. We meet every Thursday. This group is meeting this Thursday, and we are finalizing reviewing recommendations for agritourism. So that's under the standards. We decided our next tackle would be the standards, which is on your right side of your screen. It's a very large section of land use code with a variety of interesting things inside of it. After that, probably my next biggest priority is going to be subdivisions. But here's where I'm going to just tell you that I will take guidance from a majority rule, of candidates. So if people feel strongly that something should be put before something else, pipe up and let me know, please. Also, many hands make light work. We have a lot of land use codes, not to mention municipal codes, to get through. So more volunteers will only help get it done more quickly. All right, so municipal codes. In this, we have some relief in that a number of these municipal codes are actually state code carryovers. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And we do have a lovely team of retired lawyers who have agreed to take on reviewing to make sure everything's up to date with the latest state code and basically bringing it over into our city governance. Next. All right, this is my last slide for you all. So early priorities that everybody that's running for office needs to think about. So I put at the top the quote from LUDMA, which is the Land Use Development and Management Act. It states that in Utah, the very first step is to appoint a planning commission and then proceed to adopt a general plan. Luckily, we can appoint a planning commission in November after the canvass has been done, the certification of the election. So we can get started with the planning commission as early as November. The transition team has offered to assist further by creating an application that can be sent out to individuals in the Valley, and people can go ahead and submit applications that we can collect on behalf of the City Council and then just simply turn over to you if that's what the candidates would like to have happen. But that way, come, I think it's November 18th when the certification happens, that way when the canvass is done, whoever is officially the City Council, they can actually go ahead and appoint members to the Planning Commission, and they can start to get real work put together. Real work. That means, you know, putting towards the actual final ordinances and codes and whatnot. So you will also have to adopt an ordinance about a planning commission. That will come more towards January because it'll have to be publicly noticed and all these other things. But it's interesting to note that you will appoint a planning commission before you will adopt the code for the planning commission. So just an interesting bit of trivia. As far as the general plan, so the very first thing that the planning commission will need to do is review and make a recommendation towards the City Council on a general plan. City Council cannot look to adopt any codes without a general plan. The general plan is the overall strategy of the Valley. And you can think of the codes as tactics and ways that we're going to achieve that strategy and be successful. The codes and the ordinances are the teeth that get us to where we want to be. But in order to do any of that, you need to know where you want to go. So the general plan comes first. It describes exactly what we're looking to accomplish. And then you write your codes and ordinances in order to achieve that goal. So the other thing that I put down here, just so you're also aware, it's a lot of work and a lot of regulation in terms of how much time it takes. So every adoption of a land use code, general plan, all of that is going to have to go through a public hearing. So the Planning Commission is going to have to, everybody has to abide by various public hearing rules, but the Planning Commission is going to have to publish it as a Class A notice. It's got to be published for 10 calendar days prior to the meeting. It has to be mailed in the mail to every affected entity. So every basically citizen or landowner of the new city will have to receive a mailing about it as well. That's for the public hearing. Public meetings are slightly less, so they can be published 24 hours in advance. They don't require a mailer, but because mailers are going to cost money, all of this will cost money. And as you saw earlier in the presentation, we don't have money right away. It would be my suggestion that between the Planning Commission being appointed in November and getting ready to publicly notice, we have all of our ducks in alignment so that we can use one mailer or as few mailers as necessary, so that we can be as cost efficient as possible. That would be my suggestion. And there you go. So, questions?
Thank you. I know there's going to be questions, so if you don't know how to raise your hand, you can just chime in. Anyone? Okay, we have Blaine.
Sorry, the planning commission doesn't take effect until obviously the city councils are appointed, so they may be appointed in November, but they don't actually have the power to start these procedures until January.
So I am not a lawyer, but I have read the state code. My understanding is that review it, like right now, all of the papers are online in a shared drive. They're open for everyone to review and work on. Before I give you a definitive answer, I'd want to ask an attorney to confirm. Only because I know there was some language about in order to adopt, each meeting has to be publicly noticed. I don't know whether it's an actual meeting to review and start scripting, say, general plan language. So I defer to an attorney.
I'm an attorney. I'm not a land use attorney, but I'll venture and no. You know, the answer is we need to research that. I would find it very odd that the code provision that I quoted in the prior slide would allow the council to appoint a planning commission and then not have the planning commission get to work in some way until the officers are sworn in. And so that's a good question, and I'll research it.
Okay, thank you.
I have something to say about that. The planning commission is just advisory, so they're not going to make any decisions. So they're no different than all these great committees that you've all established and been working on. And you're advising people, and you're going to be advising the elected officials as well. The key is that once that you want to adopt that opinion or that ordinance, then you have to be an elected official. And so that's a difference. I would think they would be fine to advise, to review, to look, as a matter of ethics, to make that public, that people can come in and partake of that and participate in that, whatever they want to do. It's no different than what you're doing right now.
And I hope very much that the city council will consider many of the Team 3 volunteers. I'm not being biased. It's just that they have all just spent multiple months reading every single ordinance that exists.
Mm,
I think it'd be silly not to
yeah,
keep the
I agree.
committees in place. Yeah.
But that's just, yes, my opinion. But the decision will be made by the actual elected officials, and we will be, we have completely, we have a section of our transition team that are not candidates as well. And so they are our neutral arbiters, and they will be the ones administering the applications and whatnot. So it won't be muddied or mingled.
Thank you. Any other questions on planning and land use?
I have a
Yes.
question. This is Heidi Gross. Does the county own property that we can take over to use like for parks or for city offices or for shops and that for, if we end up with, the snow plow or lawn care or whatever for our parks or whatever?
Here, I'll try to take that. No. They don't own property that by virtue of incorporation we just would automatically get. Early on there was discussion. I think there's a road and maintenance building that they have up here. And I think from the outset of incorporation discussions, there was really no plan to try to purchase that. So, if they are lucky enough to get our business to continue plowing, they would probably continue to use that. And as for the parks, let's see, is Marshall, are you on?
Well, I can answer it.
Okay.
I mean, I think if I know where you're going with it. So our current situation as unincorporated Ogden Valley, our current general plan discusses a Huntsville Park, a future to be Huntsville Park. And that was something that was given or dedicated by Snow Basin, the owners of Snow Basin, in their master plan. They were dedicating 7 acres of land, open space land, to create a future park. It is outside of our city boundary, so we will not be incorporating that.
Hey, Janet, can you explain to everybody the difference between a general plan and a master plan?
So I saw your question in the chat. I've been all over LUDMA's website, and they actually, for the most part, use or tell you that you can use the terms. There are 3 terms that you can somewhat use interchangeably. So I'm going to say, since you have, you were part of the group that actually put this general plan together, if there is something you wish them to know, I'm going to open it for you to answer.
No, I just think
Sorry,
I just
LUDMA had
think-
said that there were 3 terms, and they can basically be used interchangeably, is what I understand.
Yeah, I think some people, at least my experience is that people get very finite, especially if they're emotionally involved in something. And a general plan is often just a general idea of what you want to have happen. And then the ordinances, like you said so clearly, the ordinances then form that. So, yeah. So
Yeah.
if anybody has, questions about that, I'm happy to answer those too.
How does the general plan differ from the charter that's been discussed?
So a charter is, we kind of are, it's most easily to be understood like a constitution. And a general plan is the overall vision of the growth of an area. So the general plan has mandatory sections that have to be there, everything from roads, traffic, resources, water, affordable housing or moderate housing now. There's a bunch of mandatory sections that have to go into how you're going to plan an actual municipality. A charter is more of a constitution. It's the things that will then supersede certain laws that get adopted. So, for example, I guess one example might be if we decide to do a charter, first and foremost, the people who can decide to do a charter would be the city council. They would then appoint a charter committee. The charter committee would write up the proposed thing, and then it would get voted on by the entire general citizenry of the municipality. So it's a multi-year process that can get started right away if the city council decides they want to pursue it, but it will take a little bit of time, and we will need to have municipal codes, which are laws prior to the charter being able to be adopted. There will be municipal codes. The charter then supersedes backwards in anything that would conflict. So in other words, if the city doesn't adopt an ethics or conflict of interest code or a way to remove somebody from office, if they break certain things, break certain ethical codes, if they are remiss and they don't put something like that in, but it is in the charter, then the charter supersedes the fact that it wasn't in a law. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
Janet, thank you. You've done a ton of work.
Thank you, Laura.
No small task.
Amazing.
I have an incredible amount of just really dedicated volunteers. So when everything is said and done, I'll put an article in the paper to shout them out, because it would never have gone so smoothly without the work of so many of our residents. But as you can see from those slides, there is an incredible amount of work still left to do. So I'm going to reiterate what Angela said at the beginning, and that is everybody running for office should really consider dedicating your time and your effort into all the work that it takes to set this city, or what was the term? Stand it up. So please jump in. The water's fine.
We're still in one piece, right?
Sort of.
Smiling. Great. Thank you so much, Janet. Okay, so with Team 4, this is a little bit of an outlier. These are, I guess you wouldn't say elements that are required for, Utah statute to stand up that city, but there's been many voices that have said these are important to us in the Valley and should be addressed in a number of ways. So we have basically 3 kind of Team 4 groups. One is city culture, and those are, symbols, flags, songs, something that celebrates us as a city. Perhaps that would be a process by which we find the name that everyone is so curious about. And we are waiting on a proposal from MOU from Mountain Arts and Music, which we feel will be a great fit. They're well connected and have great participation across the Valley, and could be a fun way to engage kids in this area. So more to come on that, but just know that that fun cultural piece is coming as part of our deliverables. And then there have been a couple of roundtables very focused on business and agriculture. And so I think we have
Glenn Crichton,
who's going to speak to those. So I'll turn it over to him. Thanks.
And I think I'm on, am I?
you are.
Okay. I appreciate, first of all the work that has happened in advance of our doing roundtables. I'm a businessman, and my wife, we have a small business of Wild Turkey Lodge and Bed and Breakfast, and also Ogden Valley Farm, which is right across from Anderson Cove. And it's kind of humbling to try to represent farmers and ranchers and people who bale hay and do all the great things that have to do with agriculture, and also the business aspect that is so significant and important for us to consider for the future. There's not only revenue, but also the construction and things that interconnect with agriculture. Or maybe interfere sometimes with agriculture. We had a great return. You can see the number of people that were in the agricultural roundtable, and there were multiple tables, small group discussions, and then followed by some recommendations. We recognize that all of these have to be considered in more detail And some of us have leanings in one direction or another. But the main thing here is that I think the sense of community, bringing people together that of like needs or interests, and agriculture is one of the large interest areas of maintaining the natural beauty of the valley that has brought many of us here, and then, but also giving us greater latitude, flexibility in terms of how we go about farming without interfering with the rights of others. So there's interest in flexibility of the ordinances and requirements for things like farm stands or for gatherings for, let's say, parades or a celebration of a garlic festival, for example. And many other communities, other regions in the country have done a really good job over many years of keeping focus on what their gifts were. And Ogden Valley has a gift of agriculture. I just want to point out that, for example, the Gilroy Garlic Festival has been in effect for 46 years. And Virginia Plantation Gardens 90 years, and Napa Valley winery tours and so on. So those things have been in existence a long time. Ogden Valley has resources and people and wonderful opportunities for doing something that highlights this area without creating a whole new city in the sense of all the things that cities provide. It's possible for us to have things like farm stands and festivals and celebrations without having big box stores or other things that would interfere. The minute we put cement on arable land, we lose that land to farming. We have people who are interested in agritourism that would give us opportunities to share the knowledge that farmers have in the community, in our community, with the younger generations, and for people who are still interested in farming, even though they may be older, like we are. We are educators. My wife and I, Bonnie and I, are former educators and interested in teaching how to do organic farming and soil development and so on. So from the agriculture side, we support agritourism. We feel that there's a need and enough interest in the valley. You can see 40 plus participants just for one night for our roundtable on that. Maybe to research an agricultural advisory committee that would help our new government see the impact that certain developments might be toward restricting or encouraging agriculture. There's much more than I could talk about, but farm tours, bike tours, tapping into tourism in general could bring revenue without bringing growth of additional construction and loss of important land. From the business standpoint, agriculture is business. And so these two are the roundtables that were most important to my wife and I. But there are many others that are also of importance. And I encourage all of the candidates to consider agriculture as maybe an initial filter or a filter before a decision is made on what the impact might be, environmental impact. We think things like signage on the road. One of the people talked about the farm equipment, and it's slower than the general population travels on the roads, but maybe signage that would say tractor crossing or something along those lines would be helpful. We have a beautiful valley and we want to keep the natural beauty. We don't want to bring the city to the country, but rather provide a sanctuary or a retreat from the city and have people experience the beauty that we have and also maybe experience something more in the way of a cohesive community that stands around these things. One of the other ideas is to reinstitute the Ogden Valley Business Association, which was shut down during COVID years. It's time, and we have an opportunity again to bring that up and make it a viable input process for how business can be developed in the area. Farm to table meals and other restrictions that are currently in the code should be looked at very carefully. The zoning doesn't necessarily match what where things could happen. Is a farm stand an acceptable, for example, an acceptable site, even though someone has less than an acre of property, but they do on an acre, you can raise a lot of vegetables. So things like that. The farmers just need to be considered. And so I'm asking you to consider all these things, as I mentioned, and many, many more things. I think I don't want to read through the list, but the business roundtable, new businesses and or existing businesses should be looked at in a way of how can we support them, and that's all for you along the way. I'm just thrilled to be a part of this process, and thank the committees, all the committees, for all the work that you've done. We have work ahead, but it's all good. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Glenn. That was a great update. Appreciate it. Okay, so you get to answer questions if anybody has any for you. Give you all a second.
Good job.
No. Okay, we will move to this just quick slide to show on the Ogden Valley Inc. website. We have constant updated calendar of events and meeting dates that you can check out if you wanted to join on any of these groups and join the discussion. It's never too late. And then these key election dates to keep in mind as well. And then I think we've gone through the questions, but we just don't want to miss an opportunity. So
Can you put that slide back up with the dates?
Yes.
Thanks.
We can send the slide deck out as well as links to some of the information that was referenced.
I think
yeah,
we had discussed putting it on the website as well.
we'll fill it out with those report links that I wasn't able to link that Kay had done too. Make sure that's all included. Okay.
On that
there-
calendar, sorry, on that calendar, will it have all the meetings for the different teams
Yes.
and how, okay, so where we can get them and who to contact or?
Yes.
When you
It
click
does
on these, it'll
currently.
have the location of the meetings, whether they're in person or Zoom.
May I ask one general question for running?
Sure.
I was wondering, are there any do's or don'ts that we should know about as we go towards a primary? Besides the ethics thing we signed, you know, obviously that's a major thing, but anything else that we need to be thinking about?
There are certain codes, you know, in terms of political signage and things like that, you'll want to familiarize yourself with and make sure you're on the right side of the law.
Great tip. And do I find those?
They're on the county website. If you just type into the search bar, you'll be able to find that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Janet.
We can send that out to you. I think one of our brilliant volunteers had recently sent that, and there are some time restrictions and cleanup requirements on signs. We'll send that out to you. But also the county is doing that training, which is the perfect time to talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah. I think when they come up to do it at the Huntsville Town Hall, they'll have a lot of answers for your questions. And also, frankly, it's very helpful to look on the websites of the financial disclosure websites and see what past disclosures have looked like. It takes some of the terror out of the experience. And you'll see everything from people kind of handwriting their information there to a fancy Excel sheet. So it's not as daunting as it first looks.
Great. Well, thank you for all your work, team, on all of this, all of these task forces, and it's fabulous. I'm looking forward to reading it all.
Great. There's been questions about resources and links to things. Here's, I posted this information in the chat in terms of a few of the links, and we've had requests for others. So we'll be sure to send a follow-up email with those additional links and information. But this League of Cities and Towns, this is a great source for, you know, your future candidacy. And they have a book, Powers and Duties, that you can purchase from them, and instructions on how to do so is here. And yeah, we'll stay engaged.
Sorry, I have a question. Did you say you were going to send this slide deck out by email?
We'll probably post it on the website at a minimum. I suppose we could send it. Yeah, I don't see why we couldn't send it to the candidates as well. And we'll make sure all those links are functioning for you, to those reports.
A question on the Utah League of Cities and Towns. Do you know what the funding is for that organization?
I think it's through Lieutenant Governor's office, I believe.
I think it is state funded, yeah.
Yeah, it's a nonprofit, I believe.
And they have a lot of good videos on municipal government, and they also just, you know, in terms of putting your campaign together, just do a web search and see what you can find. You know, there's the legal compliance aspect, but also then there's the, what are some good campaign practices?
Is the transitioning team planning to do like a candidate meet and greet, or is that something we'd have to schedule on our own?
We haven't crossed that bridge yet. You know, the League of Women Voters are doing that. But I do think in addition, we can look at some kind of event where we can all gather as some kind of candidate fair or something of that nature. But we were first concerned of getting someone really independent like the League to host the forums. But we'll put that on the list.
And those will, the calendar will include those events, even though our group isn't hosting those. Those opportunities will be on the calendar that's shared.
Is there anything else that you all as candidates would like us to look at or research or redirect what we might be doing? This may be too soon to ask. This was an overview, but we want to be open to that. We are your research tools.
I'd just like to thank everybody. This is Andy Newton, candidate for mayor. This has been a great presentation, and I can see all the hard work that the committees have put forth. At the end of the day, I'm very excited to see the Valley move forward with this plan, however it works out. I'm looking forward to participate as we go forward, obviously, to advance myself as a candidate for mayor. But thanks very much, very informative, and look forward to hearing and, you know, speaking with everybody as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, we've kept you long, but thanks for being here, and we'll see you again.
All right. Thanks very much. Appreciate
Bye,
it.
y'all.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
You're the best.
You're the best.
No, you guys rocked it. Holy cow.
We'll see. Okay, let's save the chat.
Thank you
question.
for all that you've done, you guys. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. We'll be happy to turn it over to y'all when when you're ready. So, yeah.
Hey, since you lovely ladies are still on, can I just ask you a quick question? It's with regard to, you know, the developments and the stuff that are going on. Has there been an uptick in permits? Is that something you guys are tracking to try to beat out some of these zoning restrictions or, you know, the rezoning potential?
We haven't been tracking that as our task, honestly. Just kind of been looking to the future after city incorporation.
Okay, I was just wondering if that was something that has been, you know, just with the potential changes that are happening, the lawsuits that are happening. I'm just wondering if some people are trying to get ahead of some of the changes that may or may not come from this. And I know some of the conversations and lawsuits that have happened with Weber County and the stays that have been put in place. I was just interested if anybody has been watching that.
So I'm the chairman of the Planning Commission, and Laura Warburton has rejoined our ranks as well. So we're familiar with everything that's coming through our commission. I would not classify it as an uptick of applications and rezones as of today. What we have seen since the incorporation passed in November is people that already have approvals just coming back in to clarify language and tighten up the developer agreements, which are contracts with the county commissioners. They're not looking necessarily, you know, it's not, the ones we've seen so far have not been looking to get new approvals or additional reasons. It's working with what's already been approved. So that doesn't mean that I would expect that there will be things to come down the road, but as of today, the 17th, I haven't seen next week's agenda just yet, but when I do, we'll know. Otherwise, so far, no.
Has there been any talk about a stay until the mayor and the council is in place?
There are people that are trying to take legal action to make something like that happen. Again, I will preface this with that I am not a lawyer, but I have read the state code, and the state code grants the authority, the legislative power and authority to the county commission until our city is live and our city council is certified in January. So that, I guess, will be discussed in court between the petitioners and the county.
No, thank you for that insight. I appreciate that. And I just between social media and the news, you know, you see a lot of back and forth with discussions like that. And I think actually somebody posted exactly what you said. So I just was wondering if we're still tracking to that and if the authority still lies with Weber. So thank you.
The authority officially lies with Weber until we go live in January.
Great. Thank you. And thank you all for all the work you guys have done. This is outstanding.
Thank you
for being here. Okay, I'm going to end the meeting so you can go have dinner. Bye, y'all.
All right. Thank you, everybody.